It's weird because, I mean, I think actually Chernobyl's an interesting comparison, is because it was an invisible radiation that people didn't really understand at the time. And then it had these devastating consequences. And what's weirder is, of course, we're way more comfortable than any occupant of Chernobyl under Soviet Russia. But you do, as you say, it's a double vision. I mean, on one hand, you've got this horror, and what is the death toll up to? Are we up to Vietnam yet? Almost, not quite. But
I think we're under 700,000 cases.
Right.
But that's only in the United States.
It's like 20,000
globally.
Yeah, but I mean, these are mounting tolls, and as you point out, they just seem kind of, for those of us who are not experiencing it immediately, it seems kind of remote. So it's a very weird moment. And I think even though the days become shapeless, I guess the point about the more serious point about clothes is the weeks become shapeless. Like you don't say, oh, well, next week I'm going to go downtown, or
the way we measure what we do in our day and how to think of what is definitely been thrown up. But what I like is maybe it will be good for us as a planet to, we definitely have to stop and think more. Like, even if you take this seriously, you're probably at least washing your hands a lot more. Like, so I think that will start to fold in. And I think that we'll start to think of ways to make that stuff interesting. Like, since we now get it, the government's not going to do their job, they're not going to help. The FDA actually loosened regulations and restrictions on possible vaccines as well as tests. So we're going to go through a period where they're not going to have the usual trial standards and stuff like that. But I also think the NGOs and what historically has happened throughout history, when a government, any government, obviously the Soviet Union and our government behaving the way it is, unfortunately, I think we're all going to become community organizers. I have this feeling, not everybody, but I think we're going to find citizens becoming community organizers in a way that we're going to go either one way. We're either going to ignore them and say, they're full of it, they're drama queens, or we're going to be like, you know who else is a community organizer? Barack Obama. And I just have a feeling he would be handling this very, very differently.
Well, my joke with Chernobyl is the Soviets lied better. Like, give them
my joke is that I watched Chernobyl as a pick-me-up. I watched it as a pick-me-up after everything else. How are you guys dividing your consumption of COVID info versus completely non-COVID info or entertainment or anything?
Well, there's a podcast called This Week in Viruses. It's been going on for years, but it's state-of-the-art virology, and they all get together, and they are the problem solvers in this field. And so I listen to it obsessively.
Is it good?
Almost every day. It's so good. This Week in Viruses, TWIV.
So that's a lot. You're saying lot.
That's for viroholics. You may not be viroholics.
I'm a viroholic.
It is for you. In fact, you should write to them. They would have you on, because they're suddenly they're these nerds. They used to be the least popular people at parties.
So it's literally This Week in Virology.
This Week in Virology.
They're on the party list. They're on the party list.
You will love them. I'm in love with both. Well, there's two guys. They're kind of grumpy, but they're fabulous. They were meant for.
Smart and grumpy. That's my favorite kind of man.
Yeah, Paul Krugman is very grumpy. I mean,
Paul Krugman is so grumpy and delicious. And all of your secret Republican friends that you're in love with, like Nick Kristof and David Frum, and who have you been communicating with that you're a little embarrassed about? Come on, Jong-Fast, let's go.
Yeah, Jong-Fast.
He's like, I've been texting with Ava Braun, but you don't know her. She has a nice thumb.
Okay, I have a friend who's coming on the show next week, Dave Rubin, who is a podcaster from LA. I told him and a comedian, and I told him I were having you on. He was like, wow, that's it. But he wanted me to ask you if, having had your trauma with being canceled and, the worst case, like Twitter mobs, hate mail, death threats, did it make you more sympathetic to canceled people? you know, I don't know.
Yeah, because I think there's a way to cancel that's humorous. Like, I was really good friends with Don Rickles and Joan Rivers. I mean, I was closer with Joan, but I knew them both very, very well. And obviously we would talk about this more than anything, because they would talk about, you know, feeling misunderstood really until their last days. And Don really hated when people would call him an insult comic. And he'd say, I put thought into these quips, or he's so brilliant and fast. They both were. So, yeah, I think there are people getting canceled for the wrong reasons. I definitely, my situation was so unique. I don't even know what category to put myself in. And the fact that it's sort of still top of mind for people is definitely bizarre. But Jane Fonda already warned me this will be on my tombstone. So I'm just going with it. And look, I was thrilled to make an award-winning film. Molly did one of the Q&As as a great gift called Kathy Griffin, A Hell of a Story. And, you know, it was great to be able to put that out last year and feel like I could put out something funny. And, you know, I think, frankly, even the cancel culture is going to be interesting during COVID. Because think about it. You know, you could have somebody going online. Maybe there's somebody already hassling a certain well-known person, like this. You know, this is not God help me if I jinx, but like Adam Schiff, right? So they're trying to cancel Adam Schiff, cancel. He's not getting canceled. But in this era, if you take, like, let's say even one of the Republicans that came down with COVID, it's like, yeah, I might want to make fun of Rand Paul for a lot of reasons. I kind of don't want to cancel him for COVID right now. So right. It's definitely, even the cancel culture, I think, is sort of taking a step back. Like, you know, you got to give those Nazis credit. They waited until yesterday in the rain in Michigan to go with their gridlock Nazi AK-4. I'm not sure what that Walking Dead thing was, but
that was unbelievable, that march. And they hate Whitmer because
because she's trying to save their lives.
It's nuts.
I know.
No, we can't let her go before we talk about the Royals. Just a comment.
Okay, so here's my comment. I put some thought into this. All right, just my observation is I think that, oh, what happened? Wait, I don't hear her.
Yeah, I don't hear Danielle.
She's sending me sign language and I don't get it.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to do one, because I'm desperate for the Royals. I want to do one more cancel culture, because you said something interesting. And also, we're thinking, once this is like a kind of war that we're going through with COVID, that, you know, cancel culture and something that you went through might seem now so comically quaint after this. But yeah, you did say cancel for the wrong reasons, and comedians have always been at the forefront of free speech and challenging. You've taken a strong stance against Louis C.K. Do you think there are right reasons to cancel? Do you think there's a way they can ever?
Yeah,
I think your take on that?
Yeah, I do think there are right reasons and wrong reasons. I also think it's obviously very subjective and very personal. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. And it's not going to affect Louis's career if he agrees with anything. But for me, you know, I've known Louis off and on for many, many years. Not super, super well. Like, I have some other female comedians that were like good friends, and one of my girlfriends dated him and all this other stuff. But I've known him, that whole crowd, forever, and I've seen all their penises and
whoa. Willingly? Willingly?
Do you guys not know male comics? Like, I can't think of a male comic who I haven't seen his dick. Like, I was actually doing a list in my head the other day, and I was going down the list. I was like, oh yeah, one time we're at a party, he pulled his dick out. Oh, one time he wrapped it around his finger and said, here, Kathy, have a pretzel. Like, it's just, I'm not making light of Me Too, but this is not new in comedy. I mean, it's just, when I think the thing that was the tipping point for me was when I read the New York Times article about the two women that at Aspen went to his room and, you know, he exposed himself. And I think you know, I remember going to the Aspen Comedy Festival, and I was a young comedian, and trust me, if some famous guy would have said, hey, I'm having a bunch of people to my room, that's what the Aspen Comedy Festival is. It doesn't mean you want to be raped or anything. It's not unusual for females to go to the room of a male comic or producer or promoter, because everybody else is there. That's how kind of we know each other, a lot of these festivals. So the thing that touched me the most about the Louis C.K. story was I couldn't let go of when the two women he had exposed himself to in that room decided to get out of comedy altogether. Yeah. And that's the thing, is when people want to stick up for Louis and guys call me and why can't I get off his back? I'm not on his back. He crushed dreams. you know, and as someone who believes to this day women have to work 10 times harder and jump 10 times higher in stand-up comedy, it's still not that much different from when Joan was my age or even younger, frankly. And so to me, that's a different thing, because I know that feeling. I can imagine being in that room, and I think one of them wanted to be a stand-up and one of them wanted to be a writer. And then they both just like thought, I don't want anything to do with anything. And I thought, when you're a girl and you want to make your living in comedy, it's a calling. So that's the part, like when you're crushing dreams, then I'm not gonna be in the bro club with that.
Yeah. Do you think he's been punished enough? I mean, he lost so much, and then he was.
But I think that Kat's idea that you can't go back to the careers that these women have lost is an interesting one.
That's what I'm saying. When I got a call from someone at Live Nation talking about bringing Louis back, I just went, well, why are you calling me? Why don't you call the two girls in the article, apologize, and then help them get their career started?
Well, I guess, is there an end of purgatory? Do you see an end for someone like him?
Well, that's a different thing, because that's a habitual thing. And so, you know, Louis to me is a specific case, because when you're the guy who habitually does that particular thing, whether it's exposing yourself, you know, my girlfriend he went out with, he would stand behind her and jerk off in a sock when she was on the computer, and she finally wrote about it. Because all these years she was like, is that weird? And I'd be like, I guess it's up to you. And she'd be like, well, we were dating. It would be weird, you know. So now she was able to finally write an essay and be like, that was gross. And now I can finally say it was gross. Yeah. So I will say there are kind of many tiers. There's that tier, but then there's the tier of the executives and what I call the check signers. And there's the sexism and misogyny and ageism is so rampant there that we really somehow need more women to just step up. And, you know, like I said, you got to jump higher and work harder. But until that happens, you're not going to see very much of the paradigm shift that needs to happen. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but right now there isn't one single female in all of entertainment in the United States who can greenlight a television show or a movie. Not one. Even Shonda Rhimes has to kick it up to Bob Iger. So no matter how, you know, even Oprah has to run it by David Zaslav at Discovery, who bought OWN. So that's where I like to remind certainly younger comedians a lot. But remember, it's all about who's going to sign the check, because you can dazzle people all you want. And so if you're a female and you can be more of a self-starter, I think that's better. I think it makes you better. And that's why I live in such a world where the guy comics already get such a pass. I mean, really think about it. How many movies are there where it's 4 frumpy guys and you know who they are? They're all household names, and they've all been millionaires since they were, you know, 22 or something. They've been on sitcoms and movies, and it's the 4 frumpy guys, and we don't know what to do with this baby. It's the 4 frumpy guys, and a hot girl moved into the dorm. It's the 4 frumpy guys, and we're retired, but we still like hot girls. Like, that's still the pitch that everybody wants. So
but I hear from comedians that they can't go on campus, for example, if they don't toe the very, very strict PC line. There are these censorious little, you know, like apparatchiks from the colleges, but that humor is now policed in ways.
That's the same though as the sexual assault stuff.
What?
No, I actually think that
I don't know that that's the same as the sexual assault stuff.
What about the sexual assault stuff? Because there are a lot of
Louis
number
CK,
of wrongfully accused.
Right, but Louis CK is not being canceled for jokes. He's being canceled for all the sexual misconduct stuff, for a serial sexual.
Here's what I don't get, and you will tell me where I'm wrong. But I think he wasn't their boss. He was a big comedian. They go to the party. They're comedians. They're all drunk. They're all. And at least he turns out to be kinky. That ends your career? That ends your career?
Yes, Danielle, it does.
Right,
yes.
that was Christina.
I don't know who you are. Yes.
It does.
You told me.
You have to know, if a woman behaved 1/10 of the way all these guys do, it would be over. I mean, look at me at CNN. I got fired for a photo that was completely covered by the First Amendment. And the broadcast, it was only one night a year. Thank you. It was only one night a year, but it always did very well for them. And, you know, If I was a guy, I don't think that would have ever happened. And so
I think you can't, there's sexual assault, which is what Louis C.K. did. And
no, that was, wait. Why do you call that sexual assault? He asked him if it was okay.
Well, I don't know about all of them. Remember, only a few women came forward. I'm just telling you, I know this culture very, very well. And you're not going to get very many women to come forward the way that they did. It also, as you know, took them a long time. It's still very much the environment that if you're a female and I'm just being specific to stand-up comedy, so sorry I'm being so narrow, but if you're a female and you open your mouth like me, I mean, that's all I do is pay the price for sticking to my guns about things like Louis. Yeah, that's sexual assault because you know, I don't whip out my vulva or my clitoris to any young male comics and ruin their dreams because it has nothing to do with comedy. But to your point about college audiences being triggered, that is a totally separate issue. And I do agree that there has to be sort of a reckoning about like what is truly triggering, because like I always say, I want my audiences to be laughing or maybe shocked. I don't want anyone to really be like leaving crying. So people have to understand you can still make fun of people, make fun of yourself, make fun of others, and nobody cries. But that is a whole other world. I don't want to see anybody's dick anymore. I have been on sets my entire career where the camera guy literally rubbed his dick on my ass and like thought it was funny. And then the other 5 guys laughed too. And I was 27. And I was from Oak Park, Illinois.
And I also think you're in a position where you can't say, like if she had said, don't rub your dick on me, she would have lost her job. And I think
even if I had like gone to HR, like by the way, I've tried everything. Now in my case is frankly more of a Time's Up situation than a Me Too. So I have sort of suffered the, you know, the brunt of like just stuff guys have said to my face that I know they just wouldn't say to a guy with my accomplishments or my hardware or whatever. That is a different animal. But I do think it's good that even in our wacky comedy field, it's good that these guys got exposed. I mean, I think some of the guys that I've known for years, I do think they're being a little more careful. And I think
it's certainly a good thing. I agree that we don't want to put up with this shit and let them know.
Louis is not the hill you want to die on. I just want to say that. Louis is not the hill you want to die on.
Yeah.
But also, and Louis really has a serial, I mean, like Harvey, a kind of serial, hundreds of women. And
he loves Woody, and he's like, he and Woody are like, they have that same thing where, you know.
Okay, Woody Allen. Now wait, that accusation of child abuse.
Wait, Woody Allen is friends with Louis C.K.?
Oh, yeah.
All makes sense.
I think Louis was in Blue Jasmine. I think he put Louis in maybe 2 movies, but I'm almost sure.
Tell you what, the thing with Louis C.K. that I always wondered was like, I was always like, he's just not very funny. Like,
wait a minute.
The bros love him. Like he kind of has that Chris D'Elia, not quite Joe Rogan, but like he's what you call a crusher. Like he's that guy that hits the stage. You know, he doesn't need props. I mean, he's a talented guy. I mean, I met him. I mean, when I met him, he was a comic and he was making short films. And then he had complete autonomy for his FX show, which I have never had. And I'm a, 8-time Grammy nominee, 2-time winner, 6-time Directors Guild Award nominee. So I just want you to know, the reason I just keep saying Louis is fine. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of guys that act that way, that are actively helping to bring him back into the loop. That's what you should be worried about. There really is a group of bros that they have each other's back in a bros for bros way, in a way that the women never have. And we haven't really gotten that lesson yet.
I'm reeling from all the penises you've seen. I just didn't know that.
Yeah, I know.
But it didn't drive you out of the field when, a guy would, I mean, it's gross, but I just don't understand. Those were the mores. It may not have been, those probably weren't the mores before, the sexual revolution in the 70s and 80s. Before that, people were probably a little better behaved.
No, but they weren't, because of the 50s, they were, I mean, my mom said when she was doing her PhD that her advisor chased her around the table. I mean, I don't think the sexual revolution I think these men, a lot of men.
I think the guys came out the winners, and we thought we were kind of being more liberated, but I think all in all, the guys became the winners, because they ended up, as usual, kind of slut-shaming us for the sexual revolution. So
can Can I change the subject quickly before we lose you, Kathy? I want to hear about the Royals. We kept putting them up.
I know. And by the way, I love
and the Royals and the Covington boys.
No, I want to hear personal.
Okay, so first of all, here's my take on the Royals. And by the way, I am rewatching The Crown season 1.
Oh, okay.
So good.
Because, the Wallace Simpson, quote scandal, and don't mean to brag, but I was pals with the late, great, wonderful Gloria Vanderbilt. And I remember she showed me a picture of her hanging out, I think it was in Farmington, with, was he Edward when he abdicated?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he married Wallace Simpson?
Wallace Simpson.
Yeah.
Oh, she hung out with Wallace and Edward?
Oh, Glo Vandy, hung out with all of them. She was just one of those where I'd go to her house and it'd be like this. The only time I'd shut up and go, you talk. And she'd go like this, I fucked hot Brando, not fat Brando. Like, she was a dream.
Oh my God.
Dream. Anyway, I think in those days, it was so aggressively worse that I do think it's good that I know you feel like we swung too far on the pendulum, and I hear you, but like we sort of themed the whole conversation, we got to go to one side of the pendulum first. And so I get it. You may not think that Louis C.K. is analogous to the guy who jumps out of the bushes, but you're right. I stayed in the business. But let me tell you, how many 59-year-old comedians can you even name that are still working, still, well, I may be at least infamous, but it's a grind because you're staying in the game because you love it. But I'm just telling you, like I said, I see my male contemporaries, whether they're my age or they have the same amount of experience or whatever, and the stuff that they get away with is just beyond. And so in the old days, I know for a fact it was way worse. Remember when I did my first commercial when I was, 16 or 17 or something like that. And so I've been, I was like an extra for a long time. And then I did what's called under fives, which are under 5 lines. And so I've been on sets, 20, 25 years ago where there was really, really outrageous stuff. Like there were times where even then when I didn't have the consciousness of it, and maybe all of us didn't, but there were times where you got that strong feeling, or like I said, you literally got grabbed, or in my case, I was probably mouthing off and then I just would have some guy just rip me an asshole because I had a difference of opinion and then fire me in front of everybody. Like it's just been years and decades of that. So I think we women have a lot of work to do. And one thing we should at least do is lean into this period when we, with this administration working against Time's Up and Me Too, at least philosophically, the more I think we can lean into it. I'm telling you, those guys, they stick together like dirty cops. And I say that with someone who's, I had an uncle who was a cop on the take. So
I'll just say that I want to lean into it, but I want to keep due process and the First Amendment. That's all. If we've got those. And
I hear you. Oh, that's my
comment. Too many women willing to give that up. And also I've seen too many women that are just, of course we have to stop the monsters, the Harvey Weinsteins and so forth, but there's just a lot of guys that are confused as we are and nerdy. They make the wrong move and then they move in, and we've had them on this podcast, people that were just wrongly accused. And that's not the answer. The answer to male chauvinism isn't female chauvinism. It should be mutuality and mutual civility, where you can still make jokes about each other.
But what about Danielle and I want to go back to the Royals?
Yeah, can I set this up for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
As just like I'm Canadian originally, so I'm an avid longtime Royal watcher.
Thank you for taking them.
Yeah. Well,
We're in LA.
Where do you
got them?
I have them.
Yes.
And I don't want them.
Okay, so Kathy.
We kind of want them in New York.
So Kathy, you of course famously did your D-list thing.
Yes.
So Harry and Meghan have come to Hollywood. They're in Malibu in an undisclosed location because I follow these things. And they were ready just before the outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, comedic timing. This is bad timing. Just before the outbreak, they moved to Malibu and were about to do their whole new life. And Meghan was saying, I'm only going to work with A-list directors, and we're getting away from those stuffy royals. Then this whole thing happens.
Uh-huh.
They're in Malibu. The news coming out of Malibu is that they're looking at Mel Gibson's $12 million ex-house.
Which has a church on it.
He
has his own church on it. He built his own church on his property.
Right. But in England,
like
well, that's handy for them. But in England, you know, meanwhile, Prince Charles, the Queen, the Cambridges, they're all out doing their best to help Britain get through this pandemic. So it's looking really bad right now for them. And I just am curious, because you know Hollywood hierarchy so well. Like, you're a kind of ex-royal. How are they going to do?
Well,
in
you know,
that
it's funny.
world?
I'm gonna relate it to the Posh and Becks thing a little bit, which is
Oh yeah.
for years I was hearing, you know, obviously like they're so huge, they're so huge, they're so huge, and you know, obviously my British friends, and it was kind of all about like, America, get ready, because when and if they ever decide to take Hollywood by storm, like everybody else can just go home. It's game over. And it was hysterical. I mean, I cannot verify, but it appeared to me as a comedian that they moved to LA and spent a year like calling the paps, the paparazzi, and like purposely going out with like Eva Longoria to Jessica Simpson to a head of state. And I think when I would go do British talk shows during that period, they thought it was funny, but I'd be like, I don't mean to be rude. I just don't think Americans are ever like really gonna get into the royals the way you guys are. Like, we kind of, I just want to know, we kind of pick and choose, I'll be honest. Like, we all
never heard of them. I mean, we heard of
of
Queen Elizabeth, but who were they?
Do you think Posh and Becks not famous in LA?
They're not, you know what's odd? They don't, in Los Angeles, they don't have that like, oh my God, you had a Posh and Beck sighting, or you went to the Posh and Beck's party. I'm just saying, typically when you have a world-class athlete and then you have a female pop star / you know, fashion icon, billionaires and all that stuff, and they're all doing campaigns. It was just interesting. Like, they came and they hung out and then they kind of left. And so
well, I think that's the thing. Like, what I fear for them is that they gave up the thing that makes them interesting to Americans, which is, hey, can we come hang out in a castle when we visit England? And like their friends, the Clooneys, right? Like, we're in our Sussex mansion or whatever it is. We'll come and borrow sugar from your Sussex mansion, and that will be cool. But in LA, it's like that. It's got its own royalty and pecking order, and this idea that Meghan was Hollywood royalty, the way Grace Kelly was Hollywood royalty. I
think I don't, you know, it's actually, I actually thought they were still living in Canada, so sorry about that. I obviously very COVIDed.
Well, this just shows how the trouble they're going to have, Kathy, is to your point.
Well, you know, I think the racism was worse than I thought, because I didn't participate in it. So when I heard the rumblings that it was so severe, and then, you know, as I am a darling of the right wing, Molly knows this well, they all know her name too, you know, you kind of stumble upon those comments when you're reading the own, like, you know, as they say, the hellscape that is, you know, social media. So I do understand that part. I do kind of think it's cool that Harry went from being like a cute twink that all the gays were talking about to now he seems sort of like a grown-up, like responsible dude. So that's different. Just, you know, the gay boys still like him better than Will. But I also, you know, I'm actually interested to see what they do here, because you're right. And also, especially frankly, in light of this pandemic, when there may be an entire global paradigm shift, it'll be interesting to see sort of when we come out of this, if people even care about stuff like that anymore, or if they care more because they want to aspire to it, or what, you're right, what role are they going to play? Do they care? Do we care? You know, but I would say most people that I sort of chat with think it's kind of cool that they got out of there. Like, I just, look, I love Elizabeth. I can't help it. I'm a gay man. I love, you know, I love the sort of pomp and circumstance and stuff, but it, you know, she was pretty brutal on the way out. Like, she kind of went Lady Di on the way out. You know what I mean? I'm one of those that thinks Diana should have kept her princess title. So I'm one of those.
Yeah.
So
I have a question.
Yes.
What you just said about you being a gay man. So how do I put this politely and so we don't get canceled on Twitter? I have spent my life, and I can't find any other word for it, but I am, and I acknowledge it, a fag hag. Isn't there a better word?
Girl.
Yeah. They love me, I love them, and it started in 2nd grade with Billy Burgess. Billy, if you're out there, we always understood one another. Billy, my question is, isn't there a better word now for fag?
Yeah, the gays like fruit fly, but
Ooh.
yeah, but I do a bit in my movie where I say, you know, I've been in this fight, in this game and canvassing and an ally for so long that frankly, I will not give up the title of hag. So I do not need to use the F word, but I say, and the audience always applauds, look, you young gays, I've done too much knocking on doors, too much protesting. I am bigger than a fruit fly. I'm a hag, damn it. I've earned that title. And so
I think you're right.
Right? And they laugh because they're like, okay, she didn't say the bad F word and she owns being a hag. And I think it should have some dignity, damn it.
Well, can I ask, what is the quality? Because some women, like, I feel I will never be a fruit fly. And I say that resentfully because I don't know what is the quality that makes, like, you and Christina, I'll use fruit fly. But what is it? Like, what is it that makes you the icon? Like, there's a quality, like Liza Minnelli,
seriously,
and not someone else, you know?
It is nothing more than chemistry. I firmly believe, because I also, in first grade, you know, somehow took to the quiet boy who never found the right girl. I also literally officiated the wedding of my high school boyfriend to his lover. So, you know, I've really gone full hag, honey. I have got all caps, emojis, full hag. But I think it really is chemistry. And when I say that, I think that you'll find with women that do have a lot of gay friends, whether they're LGBT, fluid, whatever, to me, it's a sense of feeling like no matter what, you're always a little bit of an outsider looking in, or maybe you feel like a lot of an outsider looking in. But I think that's kind of the connection. So I think, for example, Joan Rivers and I, I'm looking at your picture, Joan Rivers and I would talk about this a lot. And I would say, I remember the first time we really sat down to talk shop together, like a really, like, not just small talk, but like, you know, and then that's all we talked about. But I would just say, like, as a joke, I'd say, how are you doing with the gay audiences? Like, just, you know, because I knew it would get, and she'd go, oh, come on. And I knew what that meant. Like, and so we used to have this joke. We would say we love gay audiences because they're unshockable. What are you going to say to, like, a 55-year-old gay guy, or frankly, a 20-year-old gay kid who's on Grindr? What am I going to say that's going to shock them? So right. That's, you know, as an artist and stuff, I think there's that sort of sense of connection already. So to maybe somewhat disenfranchised types of people feeling like if we get together, we feel that kind of community. So I think that, you know, obviously it's...
And add to that good taste and brilliance.
Well, that's the thing.
Tell us about Bobby from Sarasota. And
he's a legend, first of all.
He's a legend.
He's a legend. So what happened?
He wrote you a letter, and what he said about your host New Year's Eve. Just tell a story, because I love it.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but in the film, which you can get on Amazon Prime or Apple or anywhere downloadable except Netflix, in my film, I read the whole letter. I read it word for word because sometimes I think comedy, you actually can get away with certain things if you're letting the audience know, like, I am quoting this person. So this is a guy who is a fan, and somehow this letter, like, made it to my desk, and it was an old-timey letter, not an email. And it was just a vicious, but in a gay way, which means vicious but fabulous, takedown of, you know, Anderson Cooper. Right. And it was so vicious, and I talk about this in the film, that it was so over the top that I, like, involuntarily was bursting out laughing, even though it was, like, had bad language and words we don't use anymore. Just that he just dove in and
it was gay to gay, like, as a gay man, Anderson, you've let down the team, kind of thing. But
you never betray.
That you never let your hag down. And he said something like, you never let your hag down, or you always stick by your hag, or something like that. And so that's when I get into the, yes, I would like to retain hag status, and all the younger girls can be fruit flies.
Kathy, I know we're keeping you for your time. Do you have a couple of minutes to remain just to answer a couple of questions that came in for you from our subscribers at Patreon?
Can Molly be my phone a friend?
Yes, I'll answer the question.
Can I ask one question about the Covington?
No, Christina.
I know. My followers are like,
no, Christina, I'm going to end this here, because I don't want to lose Kathy.
Silence. You're silencing a woman.
Yes.
Silencing a fruit fly.
First of all, for the main podcast, I want to thank Kathy so much, and Molly, for being here. And then we're going to, if you guys who are not subscribers are going to miss questions for Kathy. And boy, They're
Are you gonna
incredible.
regret
They go beyond the Covington boys. Can I just say?
No, I'm going to bring up the Covington boys.
No,
but
no.
not for anybody that doesn't follow us on Patreon.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna end this here and then just stay on, ladies, for a second. And Kathy, we're so grateful to you. Thank you. I'm just hoping you have nothing better to do at this moment. But
I have loved this. This has been the closest thing to a hug I've had in a while.
all right, stand by.